Hi, I'm Travis,
And I'm James.
and this week on Monday Coffee Show, we're going to talk about how your opinion is wrong and why social media is making that maybe a little bit more apparent.
So the main reason we decided to talk about this is because I feel like since the election, there's been a lot of, as Trump said, alternative facts from his side of the political spectrum, and people present it as if it's facts, or some people just completely ignore facts because they know they're wrong, but they don't want to admit that they're wrong. So they're just like, nope, that's not true. Somebody can give them statistics and written evidence and peer-reviewed, evidence, and they're just like, nope, don't believe it.
There's this kind of funny idea where, and I read this, where in the U.S. that everyone's entitled to their own opinion, and that is something that we try our hardest to respect, and that's typically I don't like coffee, or I prefer going skiing to snowboarding, or this TV show is bad, and those, yes, are opinions. But I will tell you something. If I held to the opinion that James's hat was blue, like sky blue, I would be wrong. That would be my opinion, but I would be objectively wrong. And that's the thing, and that was this thing that I read where, sure, yes, you are entitled to your opinion, but it can be just dead wrong. And holding on to that, despite being presented a ton of facts, or just worldviews outside of your own, or someone objectively showing you a color palette next to James's hat and being like, no, it's black. You could maybe make an argument for a really, really, really dark blue, but it's black. And that's a tricky thing. It's hard to tell people, especially say maybe a cousin you never talked to or whatever, that I'm sorry, your opinion is wrong.
Yeah, and I think one major thing, like you said, this is America, we have the rights to freedom of opinion, freedom of speech, but I feel like people attempt to manipulate that to construe hate speech, and it's freedom of speech does not protect hate speech. For example, I have a friend on Facebook who we used to work together years ago. I don't know if you saw, but it was this video of this Nazi guy that got punched in the face and he got knocked out as soon as he got hit.
Oh.
I think it was in BC or something.
No, it was in Seattle.
Seattle.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
My friend's mother, because my friend posted a video and it said that the guy got what he deserved, which I agree with. But his mother was I don't think that violence is justified in any circumstance if somebody's just voicing their opinion. But I'm that's not really true. So there was a whole argument between everybody and his mother.
Right.
But and somebody brought up a really good point. They said that tolerance of intolerance is what causes major negative events like the Holocaust and whatnot.
Yes.
And people try to argue that,
which is why people get very upset about literal Nazis,
right?
People who are wearing swastikas and doing the Zig Heiling and doing all that. Yeah, there's a reason we get upset about that.
Yeah, because history has shown that that's been a major problem, and that people have millions of people or thousands, however many, have died. So it's things like that. It's not an opinion. It's you're just wrong, and that's it. Just like anybody, for that matter, who thinks oh, this race is superior to this race. No, we're all people. Nobody's superior because of their ethnicity or because of the color of their skin. It's just not. It doesn't work like that.
There's also just there's been a huge explosion, and this is probably old news by the time this comes out. But around the NFL kneeling, and how this is a protest, and there's a lot of feelings about let football just be football, and I think it's crazy. I mean, Colin Kaepernick is absolutely at the forefront of that, but there's also many other athletes, professional athletes, student athletes, down to there have been here in Philadelphia, our local little football teams they have done that, where like they have like gone to football games and knelt during the national anthem as an entire team. But I think what's a thing. I think what's wild is how upset people really get about that, but they don't get upset as nearly as upset about what the protesting is about, and it's nothing new. I mean, like there's the image of the two black men at the Olympics, raising their fists, and there is all of Muhammad Ali's protests. None of those were accepted in their time, but we're like, oh no, but those were done well. But it's really only because history has shown us that they were right, and right now, like we're seeing kind of the same thing.
Yeah, I just feel like even working in like the entertainment industry, which is another reason I'm kind of iffy about if I still want to do it, it's more about politics and, appeasing people who are in power, quote unquote, than it is about like what you can actually do as a person as far as talent or whatever. Because it's like if you don't play the game, as they say, it's a huge problem. And with the NFL thing, like I don't watch football, I don't care about football, it doesn't make me any money, so I don't care about it. But I definitely see why the people are like kneeling, and when people get upset and people are like, when it starts a dialogue and it's like, okay, so why are you upset that people are kneeling during the anthem? And it's like, well, there are all these soldiers that fought for our country and blah, blah, blah. And it's like, but the country is not, as great as you think it is, and it's not treating people equally as far as, even it's just individual people and people who are in power purposefully like looking down on other people because of the color of their skin or because of their ethnicity or whatever other superficial reason. And then it's always this, it cracks me up when people go, well, I'm not racist, but it's like there shouldn't be a but there.
Oh, yeah.
Or I don't agree with, police brutality, but
there's a really great Game of Thrones quote, just because I've been watching through that, where someone says that to Tyrion, where they're like, I'm not racist, but they like give him a compliment and then say, but, and he goes, anything that you say before the word but doesn't count.
Right.
I think that's really, really important under the context of I'm not racist, but.
I just think it's weird because I feel like people. Because I grew up in like a mixed family, I never really saw racism until I got like older. Like I never have experienced it. Hopefully I never do. I mean, I don't know. But I've seen it and it's just like, this stuff still happens. Like it's confusing and people, because like I always hear people talk about it, but it's like since I haven't seen it often, it's like I didn't think it was still as prevalent as it is. Yeah. And I feel like now with the political climate, it's getting even worse because I feel like society's regressing in a way. Mm-hmm. And I feel like social media is kind of like at the head of why. And it's like Twitter, my problem with Twitter is that they'll ban people for certain things, but then it's like so many quote unquote alt-right and Nazi people that are still active on Twitter that are doing hate speech, and it's just like, oh, I reported somebody and they like sent me back like, we viewed this person's account and they did violate our terms of service, and I'm like, but they didn't suspend the account, like the account was still up.
Right, yeah.
I just was like, oh, this is weird.
We made them delete the tweet. We punished them by making them delete the tweet.
As they continue to write 20 more that we're not going to pay attention to. It makes no sense.
No, that's crazy. And I think like, even just to like, just like kind of tie this back to like, the idea of like opinions are wrong. Like, yeah, you can have your own opinion, but if your opinion is this person should die because they are, essentially something that they were born as, maybe your opinion is wrong. Like, and I like, there's this like really wild idea in this like, violence shouldn't be accepted under any circumstances. Is wild because just the and I'm not the first person to say this, but just the idea of being a Nazi, just the idea of being a member of the Ku Klux Klan or any of these hate groups, because there are many that exist in the United States, because America. But like those people existing in those groups, like they are violent by nature. Their entire thing is, I don't want these people to exist, and they do that violently. So if you believe that violence isn't acceptable under any circumstance, maybe you should address the people who are starting the violence.
Yeah, and another thing is that I don't agree with that. Like, I'm not, just for going up and punching people in the face. However, to me, legally, I would justify that as self-defense because I'm like, if you're using hate speech towards me and you're walking up to me, I don't know what you're going to do, so I'm going to defend myself and I'm going to punch you in the face. And I also feel like sometimes people genuinely need to get their ass beat to realize, like, hey, maybe I shouldn't think this way. I mean, it's just like when some people are kids, it's like sometimes you get a pop on the hand or whatever because it's like you shouldn't do that. And it's like, as you get older, that registers as, okay, I shouldn't do that because of this. But to just sit there and let it happen and be like, well, I don't agree with you. That's not going to do anything because they're going to be like, well, I don't agree with you. And it's just a back and forth that's not going to end.
Is
that's
what a lot of those
essentially what it
arguments
is.
turn into. I think we see a lot of that on social media as well as like what will happen is someone will post a fact and like, yes, sure, it's a fact, but that's typically one piece of data and it's usually anecdotal. And like, yes, even if that's a fact, that does not prove your point because that's not how facts work. But also, if I have one fact and you have one fact and they're in conflict, maybe we need to look at different facts. Maybe we have to like keep searching, and maybe there are ways to search for those facts, like just like maybe broader scope things, like stuff that actually would like be data, and which is why that was a really big thing after Michael Brown's shooting in Ferguson was people started to realize there was little to no data at all about police shootings. Like there was nothing being published about that. So there have been multiple groups who have started combing through public records to try to backlog as much as they could, but also making sure that like we are aware of exactly what those situations are and what that data looks like. And it's really important, but like it's all very available on the internet, which if you just, when you're on the Facebook, you open a new tab and then there's typically, depending on what thing you're using, Google just pops right up. It does for me.
And to kind of go off on like a little bit of a tangent, something that I like found out on Twitter is that I forgot what state it was, but it's a state that's trying to sue people who are looking up public records in relation to like police brutality. And I was like, oh, that's the first step of a tyrannical government trying to start. Because it's like, how do you sue somebody for searching what's publicly available? That doesn't make sense.
You're gonna have to show me that because I'm flabbergasted. I'm not shocked, but I'm flabbergasted. That's wild.
I just feel like even just being on Twitter, it used to be enjoyable, and now it's just like nothing but every other tweet I see is like politics, like something about racism, something about socioeconomics, and it's just like, where is the entertainment? It's like gone. It's just, ugh.
You know where you can find the entertainment on Twitter? Monday Coffee Show has our own Twitter account, and we post at least once a week. Yeah, I can't do Facebook anymore. I've been backing off of Facebook. The only thing that I've been doing on Facebook is like managing the like pages that I run, like this one. And otherwise, I really have to stay off of it. But I just can't anymore. And it's not just because of like political stuff with my family. It's also just that's just a website that's a little bit too much.
Yeah, I've had to unfriend quite a few people, quite a few musicians actually, because they were very adamant about their support for Mr. Cheeto.
This was a little bit like rambling in a sense, but like, I think that, we've made some pretty clear points, like, just because you have a fact behind you doesn't make your opinion correct. Sometimes opinions can be wrong. Social media is literally the devil, but it's so addicting and we'll never give it up because there's just something great about ridiculous comedy tweets on Twitter. And just the idea that like just because you don't agree with what the person is protesting doesn't make it any less their right to protest, as long as they are not advocating for violence against people, because that's a problem. But we will see you next week on Monday Coffee Show. We hope that you subscribe. We hope that we didn't scare you away with all of this very scary opinion stuff. And we'll see you next week. And until next week, enjoy your coffee.